Smart Topics, Dumb Comics. I'm John McCombs. I'm here with Courtney Zelazny. Zelazny?
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
Got it. Excellent. You don't know how much I sweated over that. Yeah, but today we are talking about this fun topic, books for mean middle school girls.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you classify yourself as a mean middle school girl?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a period of time when I was in middle school where I definitely would have been considered, not just by myself and my peers, but like by the school institution, as a little bit of a bully.
All right. So you had okay. So what types of then books appeal to a middle school bully?
Sure. So, for example, when I was in 6th grade, there is a series of books called the Click books, written by Lacey Harrison. I think there are many books in this series, and it was actually produced into a movie. Tyra Banks is one of the producers when I was in like middle school or early high school. But the books were centered around this like group of girls, a clique, and then a new girl moves to town, and so she's sort of like an interloper in the clique, and it's about like young female friendship. And one of my friends in middle school actually did her like monthly book report on this book series, and our teachers were like, that does not send a very good message. We're gonna get those. They banned the books from the school because of this book report.
So you were you all were the original purveyors of the book bans.
Yes, exactly. We were being silenced. They were censoring our freedom
Where's your
of speech.
Fox News show?
Yes, Fox News, get in my DMs. I'm happy to come on and talk about book bans and how that affects me and my freedom of speech about being a bully.
So what was it about this book report that was so inflammatory?
I think it was just the nature of the way that the cliques works, because these books were written, the like target demographic was middle school girls. The topics weren't like specifically like inappropriate in terms of like they weren't too sexual, there wasn't like drugs or alcohol or anything in that, but it was very rich girls who lived in Westchester, and they had this name for their clique, which I always think is so funny and charming. It reminds me of like gangs, you know how like gangs have like their gang name and they're like gang colors and like gang, and I'm like, who sat down and was like, okay guys, we're having a meeting and our colors are gonna be like blue and we're gonna be against the red team and like these are our symbols. Sorry, Crips and Bloods, like, but I find it like charming, quaint.
Yeah.
But so this clique was called the Pretty Committee, and they all texted each other and they like spread rumors and they bullied this girl by like talking trash about her clothes and things like that. And at one point I think they smashed an egg on this girl's head, but other than that, it wasn't really all that bad.
Yeah.
But I think that the nature of like encouraging these young girls to be like, okay, well, these pretty rich, fashionable, popular girls are mean, and therefore the lesson that these students may take from reading these books is that being mean equals being popular, rich, pretty, etc.
Which I don't think, like, as a author, you would want your, I guess, protagonist or your, the main focus of your book, which is marketed towards young women, to be, oh, hey, like, usually it's like a nice message of like acceptance and etc. But was it just like you all took the wrong message away from this book, or was it written in such a way where it's like, oh, actually being pretty and rich is the best thing ever?
Yeah, so the message is definitely more subtle than I think that I, as a person who was a new girl moving to this school district and like trying to find my own group of friends, I was like, okay, so I don't want to be this like outcast interloper like Claire, the girl who like moves in the book. I don't want to be bullied like Claire, so what's the alternative? Being mean like Massey. And so that's what I was taking from it, but that's because I was like coming to it from a place of like seeing myself in this book, and so I'm like, I don't want to be that, so I'll be this other thing. But in the book, and so this is like a series of books, and the characters thankfully have like a lot of character growth and development where they realize, that like Claire is a nice girl and they all become friends and things like that, and they go through like finding like Massey's father at one point loses his job, and so like she is in like a financially precarious position, which if you base your identity around being a wealthy person and like putting down people who don't have as much wealth, then that if that part of your identity gets taken away, then where is your identity? But all that to say, in the very first book, the girls at one of their weekly sleepovers have a conversation where they play this game like Would You Rather, but rather than Would You Rather being sexual, it's very much like cute and innocent and middle school girlish. But one of the girls says, would you rather have a lot of friends but none of them actually like you, or would you rather have no friends but know that the people around you do like you? And all the other girls are like, I would rather have a lot of friends but not have them like me. Or I'm trying to remember because they changed it in the movie compared to the book. But in one version, they say, like the rest of the clique says, I'd rather have a lot of friends and like have them not like me. And then Massey and Claire are the only two people who are like the sort of the two protagonists of this book. And they say, I would rather have nobody like me than have a lot of friends. And then in the movie version, they flip that, which I think is sort of like antithetical to the way that the book's message is supposed to be. But it proves to be that turning point of like, you know, if you have all these friends, but they actually all talk shit about each other, then like, are they really your friends?
Yeah, and I know like the comedian in me is like, oh, clearly the first one. Well, yeah, a ton of friends and none of them like me. Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
they're followers, of course.
Yes, exactly.
So you said the movie version, and then as you're describing it now, I'm picturing Mean Girls. It's like, is that the movie, or are we?
It's not.
A different movie? Yeah,
it's a different movie.
Okay.
It's definitely a lot younger in terms of the actors and actresses who are in it. There is. I'm trying to think of anybody whose names you would recognize. Bridget Mendler is in it, and Bridget Mendler was then on Disney Channel, and now she's got a degree from MIT and a degree from Harvard. And I think she also has one from USC, and she's getting her PhD, and she's like a total science aerospace queen boss bitch. But she was previously an actress. And yeah, I think the other actresses who were in this movie are not as popular, but Bridget Mendler is probably the one who you would know the most.
Yeah, and what's it called again?
It's called The Clique.
And the movie is also called The Clique.
Yes.
Got it. When did it come out?
I want to say like early 2000s, like before 2010.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I was not in that zeitgeist for sure.
Absolutely.
So are there other books besides this series that resonated with you then?
Yeah, absolutely. So my friend from college, Claire, and we've started a podcast to discuss books like this because she and I both read these sorts of books growing up. Mm-hmm. So our podcast is now, we're recording our 12th season, so like a 12th series of books like this. Oh. The Clique had its own spin-off series called The Alphas, where one of the like side characters gets sent to like this boarding school that's all about like competition among, it's sort of like if Survivor were like for like me middle school girls. Gossip Girl is one of these books, like book series. Mm-hmm. Pretty Little Liars is one of these book series, absolutely. Okay. Some of them are a bit more adult in nature, but there's still that sentiment of like the people who are reading this might be a little bit younger than the people who are being portrayed in it.
Yeah. Huh, all right. And so they're all like, well, I was going to say they all take place in middle school, but I guess not. It's just that age range that it appeals to. Mm-hmm. All right. So, do you think this like reinforced your, I don't know, meanness as a middle schooler, or is it like a chicken and the egg thing where it's like, oh, I was already mean and these are appeal to me, or I read this and now I'm like, this is how I should act?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think media a lot of times in the time that I was growing up did have this dichotomy of like mean girl, nice girl, popular as me, and that sort of thing. Yeah. Like Mean Girls the movie, that sort of, like I think that there was a lot of that in media, so I think I was just surrounded by this constant messaging, and I definitely was not helped by continuing to engage with it. And I think it took me quite a while after, like, I was definitely still quite mean in high school, and probably had I definitely had some mean instances in like early college years too. Yeah. And now that I've, graduated and grown up and I'm 27 years old, I still have these conversations with people where they're like, oh, like either they could not tell that I was mean and they like, because I try to like, I think I might be trying to overcompensate for it a little bit, or they look at me and they immediately know like, oh, they've clocked me. They can tell that I'm like, I was mean and I'm working on it. Like roast battle, for example. Yeah,
you're a reformed mean girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, doesn't mean you don't relapse every once in a while.
It's a constant struggle.
Yeah. 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 For those who don't know, Courtney is nice. So at least has been always nice to me in our interactions. But yeah, it's just funny that they're like, yeah, this is me. I own this, and this is part of who I was growing up. And then,
Oh yeah, I've got a joke in my stand-up set about it. I don't do it all the time, but I have decided that if I were to ever do a stand-up comedy special, and this is coming like in part from like my mother as well, if I were ever to do a stand-up comedy special, I would want to call it Courtney Zelazny Cyberbully, so that if I ever get canceled on the internet, the SEO will be benefited by if someone types like Courtney Zelazny Cyberbully, they find that instead.
yeah, or like now I'm like imagining every, what is it, like not horror movie, but like a movie where someone cyberbullies someone to kill themselves, and then now they're being like haunted by the ghost of the person that killed themselves or something. Like, does that ever worry you that
someone's gonna kill themselves over what I say?
Well, no, not that, but like,
oh, they'll be haunted.
Yeah.
I do believe, I've never experienced a ghost, but I do believe in them in the same way that like I believe in aliens.
That it's like, it's possible.
It's possible. It's honestly probable. And I think I have this conversation. This is like one of my opening lines whenever I'm like trying to maybe not like a pickup line, but like pickup line-esque. If I'm trying to like start a conversation with someone, I will ask them like, do you believe in ghosts? And then they'll tell me their answer, and they'll ask them, do you believe in aliens? And then if their answers differ between those two, I always try to prod into why. And I think it's because a lot of times people will say like, oh, well, I've never seen a ghost, or I've never like heard a ghost. And I take issue with that because I don't understand why you would think that ghosts would operate on the same like laws of physics that we as living human people operate. Like maybe ghosts are not a visual phenomena. Maybe they don't maybe they're not something that can be seen visibly. And so you not having seen one is not proof that they don't exist. Yeah.
No, imagine you like someone confiding to you about their being haunted, and you're like, have you tried being mean to the ghosts? Have you tried like just commenting on the ghosts, like, oh, you're gonna wear that gown? Really?
Yes, exactly. Oh my god, bully your ghost. Stand up to your bullies, bully your ghost. If a ghost is haunting you, fight back.
Classic. I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me. That's hilarious. I love that. You should be in Beetlejuice too. That would be the concept of the whole movie. Is
brilliant. I would absolutely love to. I'm not very good at singing, but I feel like I would make up for it.
Is it a musical?
I don't know if it was originally a musical, but it's since been turned into a musical.
Yeah, I know that it is. I just was like thinking about the sequel to Beetlejuice. Now we're on a whole other.
You can only say it you can't say it a third time because then he'll come.
He'll come, but he's fun. He's not like Candyman. Candyman just kills you.
I think you can only say candy. I think you can only say that one.
I said it.
How many times can you say?
3 times.
3 times. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that movie is set in Chicago, right?
Candyman? Yeah.
I said it.
Well.
All right, well, at least it'll haunt your condo, not mine.
Yeah. And I'll bring you over. I'll be like, hey, can you bully the shit out of Candyman so you'll leave? You have to say it in the mirror. That's the thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So like the reflection of the TV that we're sitting across from does not.
That doesn't count.
Okay. Well, Black Mirror is like your phone. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. True. Huh. Interesting.
I've actually never seen Black Mirror.
Really?
I'm not. This is going to sound ridiculous, but I'm not interested in things that make me uncomfortable.
No, I get that. That's a totally like, that's a decent point because I mean, there's some things that like other people watch and I'm like, why do you want to watch this shit? Like I watch, like other people watch a lot of stuff about like serial killers and
true crime content.
Yeah, and I'm like,
see, I'm fine with that.
I don't get that. I'm like, why do you want to watch this horrible shit? They're like, because it's like it's like, this is like the reality that I have to live through and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay.
Well, yeah, it's like research. Like women are engaged in true crime content because you want to know the worst thing that could potentially ever happen to you so that you could be like just 1% more prepared, which is why it's such a red flag when men are interested in true crime because they're doing research too.
Yeah, but from my perspective, I was like, okay, but I don't listen to a podcast of like black people being pulled over.
Well, sure. That's fair. Have you ever experienced police discrimination?
No, not personally. Not personally. I've luckily have not had like very many run-ins with the police. I have been pulled over twice, and this is a joke I have that I've been pulled over twice and gotten warnings both times. So I was like, yeah, I'm protesting for Black Lives Matter, and I feel like a fraud because they've been really nice to me.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I got off with by the luck of the draw. One time I was like, well, ooh, you got me dead to rights, but they're like, well, I always had like a good excuse. You know, it was like, oh, my GPS said it's actually 10 miles per hour faster than the sign says.
Sure.
And it was. That's what it says. Like, all right. And then the other was like, one was like, it was weirdly, he asked me like a question, like a physics question or something. He was like, you know who's the fastest man in the world? And like, it was like in 2012. So I was like, okay, Summer Olympics, Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, you know how long it takes him to slow down and how long it would take you to slow down if you were going at this speed. I was like, okay. And it's like, all right, well, here's a warning. So I was like, all right, like, cool, I guess. I mean, I don't have to pay any money, so that's cool. But yeah, that's been my experience. So
I've never been pulled over by the police. I don't also drive, so that's probably like a really that eliminates most of the reasons.
That helps.
I've gotten parking tickets, but not many, mostly because of the not driving thing.
So then how do you get parking tickets if you don't drive?
I used to drive, and now I actively choose to be driven instead.
Just the way you say it is like, I choose to have someone.
It just doesn't make any. So one of the, I don't know if you saw this like post in one of the Chicago comedy Facebook pages yesterday, but a woman from Tulsa, Oklahoma was like, I'm thinking about moving to Chicago. I have a car, would it make sense for me to like have a car if I moved to Chicago, like for safety reasons as a woman?
Yeah.
And a lot of people were commenting and they were like, well, I'm not a woman, so I guess my opinion doesn't fucking matter. And I was like, it's not what she said. Please calm down. But I commented and I was like, look, I don't have a car. I've driven a car one time in the past 4 years and it wasn't even in Chicago. Like it was in suburban Pennsylvania and I was driving to go get coffee for a friend's wedding. And I was like, I have been perfectly successful without having a car, but I also live in a neighborhood that has access to every single line of the L and multiple bus lines. So like I can get anywhere. And I also have the like financial privilege of I can afford to take an Uber or a Lyft if I like don't feel like taking the CTA for whatever reason. And also my dad drove me and dropped me. Like my parents dropped me off here to record this podcast. My parents live around the corner from me and they have a car and they will drive me.
Oh, well, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I was like, if your dad has a car, then...
Have you tried not being poor?
Yeah, exactly. I'm cyberbullying this girl. I'm like, if a man tries to accost you on the CTA, just say that his jeans are fugly.
So I want to go back to the bully thing. So at what point, and now I guess we're going to get a little more into less the books and more so into you as a character, because this is interesting to me. At what point were you like, oh, maybe I should not be as mean to people?
Yeah, I think it started in high school and then I didn't fully develop until like after my first year of college, but I started to recognize that the reason why I was being mean was because I was like extremely deeply insecure and I was lashing out at people because I was like, well, if like for example, my best friend Lisa, like that's the woman whose wedding I was like driving the car for. So we were best friends in middle school. And at one point we were like 7th grade, we were on the same, my school had like something called teams where like different classes would all just be like lumped together for like lunches and like, you know, you have similar teachers and things like that. And so we were on the same team with like our little group of friends. And then in 8th grade, she and all of our other friends were moved to a different team and I was on, you know, a separate team from them. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to be with them all day, every day. And so I'm very nervous that they're going to forget about me, like someone else more than me. Who are my friends going to be? And so then I started lashing out at her. And it was one of those things where I was just like, I did not know how to like articulate to her or to any of our other friends that I was like, I don't want to lose you as a friend. And then moving into high school, obviously everyone's schedules get like a lot broader. And so I got to meet more people and be with my friends more. And so I was like, oh, okay, like I can figure this out a little bit more. And then by senior year of high school, we had become friends again. But then going into college, it was one of those things again where I was like, okay, I don't know a lot of these people. I'm feeling insecure about like my relationship with them, about my abilities and skills and talents and like other people who I'm around. And so I was still just like, I need to establish my dominance in this group.
Yeah. So it's very much like a first day at prison.
Sure, exactly. I don't think I would do very well in prison.
You don't know. You could be running it. I mean, look, you've got that killer instinct in you.
Yeah, so I think I can benefit with the killer instinct, but I think the idea of having a bowel movement in front of other people is really horrifying.
No, you get over it.
I'm sure you would, but I don't want to. I want to go to the white people lady prison from Orange is the New Black, another show I've never watched.
You ever watch that one?
I did. I'm not interested in shows that have like a lot of sex in them, or I'm just like, okay. Yeah. I like to read the synopses on Wikipedia though.
Yeah, sometimes it is like that, where like for instance, when I was talking about the serial killer thing, I'm now thinking specifically of like a movie my roommate was watching like this past week, and I watched like the first like 5 minutes of it, and I was like, this is fucking. Ugh. I'm like.
Do you remember what movie it was?
It's called Chained.
Oh, I don't know.
It's like this serial killer who like abducts this boy and his mother, and ends up raping and killing the boy's mother, and then takes the boy under his like tutelage to help him like find more victims and whatever. And I'm like, I don't want to watch like 90 fucking minutes of this shit. This is fucking rough.
Sure.
So
at least it was only 90 minutes. I feel like movies are so long now.
They are. They really are. They don't need to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, like something like that. I'm like, you can't do 2.5 hours of that shit. You're like, yo, I gotta. Yeah. So I was like, I saw it, and now I'm like, I have to know what fucking happens now. So I just Wikipedia it, and like, okay, I'm happy that I just read that synopsis. I didn't have to sit through and watch this thing and then walk away from that feeling like, cool, that was gross and I feel weird, so I'll just walk into the world now.
Mm-hmm.
After watching Law and Order SVU, and you just like walk outside like just like that on edge feeling or whatever.
Sure. I do listen to Law and Order SVU recap podcasts.
You don't watch the show though?
I have watched the show a lot, but sometimes it does get a little bit like, oh, do I have to hear the sounds of this child being abused?
Yeah, it can be a bit much.
Yeah,
for sure. So with the so do you now look back on your time as like when you were mean in growing up and think like, did that imbue you with any kind of lessons learned, or like when you can look back and say, actually, I feel like because I was this way or had this experience that it helped form who I am now if I hadn't had that experience?
Yeah, I think it puts things in perspective for me when I look at my interactions with other people now, like how I approach things. Sometimes it's like your first reaction to seeing something, it may be something that you were like conditioned to do, and then your second reaction is like, okay, no, this is actually who I am. Like, if I'm trying to find a way to say this that's not going to get me canceled on the internet. But like, if your first reaction to seeing someone like experiencing homelessness, or your first reaction to seeing someone who has a disability, or your first reaction to seeing like a group of people of a different race than you, like you may have like an instinctual reaction, and then you think about it and you're like, nope, actually that's not how I feel. I feel a different way, but like you've been conditioned to like have a certain reaction. You have to like take that step back, and I think that that's given me a lot of like great self-reflection. I think I actually may be a little bit too introspective about who I am as a person. I think about myself too much. But on the flip side of that, so other than like knowing how to like gauge my reactions and be like, okay, how do you actually feel, and like how do you behave around other people, because a lot of people have never gained that skill of like how to interact with other people. I also think that it's helped my comedy a lot. Like being mean, I think is a key part of my personality and a key part of who I am as a comedian.
Yeah. So, well, I have one other question, but I'll get to that later. Man, now I'm missing it. Because I'm like, all right, how much therapy had to happen to gain this introspection? Because I feel like it sounds like you've done a lot of like that work of trying to understand yourself and understand the way that you think, and I think that's very indicative of like, oh, you had to sit down and do this, and probably with a therapist or probably with somebody else am I on point there, or is that like?
I actually have had very little therapy, which is probably not the best, but now that I'm 27, I gotta pay for that shit myself.
Yeah.
And outside of, I could, but who's got the time? No, everyone, if you should go to therapy, I think my issue with therapy is you don't have to go to the doctor every week, so why do you have to go to the therapist every week? That seems like a lot. But no, I think I genuinely think that with like journaling and stand up and things like that, and also have like a really good relationship with my family, I think I just talk and think about myself a lot. Good or bad, I don't know.
But I'm also thankful for the fact that you admit that, like, because I don't think a lot of people will admit like they do have a base reaction to a thing that is very instinctual, and they're just like, no, why would I ever see race or look at a homeless person as as something like that. And it's like, well, these are very ingrained in us, either through nature or nurture. But I don't think enough people are honest about the fact that like we're fallible, we make mistakes, we make prejudgments, and that's just the human condition. And then having the introspection to look at how to assess that, admit it, and then work past it. I think it's actually very valuable that I don't think enough people admit that it's something that needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that going back to the true crime conversation of it all, like there are plenty of instances where people will be like, well, I did not feel safe in a situation. And there's a difference between like feeling unsafe and being unsafe. But for a lot of people, there are circumstances where like you need to listen to that gut instinct and that like intuition inside of you to be like, is this a safe situation? Should I remove myself from it? Like people of color have to be like, I need to assess whether or not I'm in a safe situation with police when I'm surrounded by white people, things like that. As a woman, I need to assess whether I'm in a safe situation if I'm like with a man. So you need to be like, okay, am I safe? Are there potential situations here that may be unsafe? Am I feeling unsafe because I'm feeling uncomfortable? And is that discomfort the same thing as being unsafe? Because you can just be uncomfortable and like that's an opportunity for growth as opposed to like safety or danger. And then outside of that, it's like you have to listen to that, but then you also have to like recognize like what may be triggering that. Yeah.
It's interesting too, because I also see people who don't operate on, I guess, this wavelength, or at least don't have as much of a like that intuition feeling, because there's definitely people who I see who navigate through this city and I'm like, you shouldn't live here. Like,
oh yeah.
Like your ability to make judgments about what is and is not safe is fucking like non-existent.
No, absolutely. And like I live like pretty close to the Loop, like downtown Chicago, and so I hear things all the time about like, oh, it's so unsafe. And I'm like, it's equally as unsafe as literally anywhere else. Like there could be different but same number of dangers if I were to be in like a more neighborhoody part of the city as opposed to downtown, because then there's nobody out and about to like help and intervene if something were to happen. Like I don't know, there's just like there's always opportunities for unsafety. Like I love to jaywalk, and like there are opportunities for someone to just barrel through and hit me with a car. Hopefully it's a car that's nice enough that if I were to sue them, I could get a lot of money out of it. But like, yes, you need to be aware of your surroundings. You need to be aware of like what's happening around you, both personally and physically. But I think about that on the internet too. Like my TikTok For You page is just every like a couple of days I'm seeing a new video of someone who was like, I was scammed because my bank called me and they said, oh no, someone wired me $1 million. Give me your bank password so I can check to make sure it wasn't you. And then I wired them $1 million. And I'm like, how many of these videos do we have to see before you realize that your bank is not going to call you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm suspicious of anything like any financial institution reaching out to me. I'm very suspicious of, even to the point I think like so there have been times where it has been legit and I'm like, I don't know about this, but that's just like I think a natural. Just have seen so many scams and understanding them is like, I don't know, but at the same time, I'm really worried about when I get older and I'm like in my 70s or 80s or something, and then I'm like, fuck, what's the scam gonna be then? Because I'm gonna fall for it, I'm gonna be like, yeah, of course, this person, was like a cop. They were like, no, they were an AI projection of a cop, and you know because of this. I'm like, why the fuck would I know that? You
Yeah,
know?
I'm not just gonna operate this assuming that everyone is AI. That's something that a crazy person would think. But I do think about that a lot with like the like deep fake voice modulation things nowadays, because those have gotten incredibly good, and I'm concerned that like my parents or grandparents may get a phone call from me because they're spoofing my phone number and it sounds like me and it's like, Dad, I need $3,000 because of insert thing here, and I'm like freaking out, and then my parents are like, okay, well we gotta send her $3,000 because it's, don't call my parents, but like they would do it.
Yeah. But now
because I'm spoiled.
Well, this opens up the opportunity for when you were a bully, be like, you know, bullies of the future are going to use deepfake to be like.
Yeah, no. See, bullying is different from scamming. Scamming, I think, is a true crime that we can all get behind, depending on who you scam. If I'm, check kiting from a financial institution, I'm like, okay.
Okay, so there's also this. Now I've been thinking about this concept in my head for a while now, because I've been trying to formulate a joke around it. How I'm saying, I am pro bullying, but I'm anti picking on people, because I'm like, there are certain people who need to be bullied because I don't think they have that like internal voice of like, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I'm being an asshole. Like I think specifically of those people who ride motorcycles that are incredibly loud, and I'm like, they all have to know we hate them, right?
Yeah.
They can't be like, oh, everybody thinks I'm cool. How they're all just glaring at me as they're trying to sit on this patio, and I just like, what fucking world do you operate in?
Yeah. Like I look at that and I'm like, wow, that guy has a lot of money and a huge dick. No, obviously not. What is and I don't know. That's so annoying. No, I agree that there is a difference between bullying and picking on people, and I think the difference is delivery and intention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people just need to be called the fuck out, is my point.
No, exactly.
Yeah. This all stemmed from, I was in the movie theater and I went to use the bathroom, and I walk into the bathroom and the first thing I see is this like 13-year-old kid like dancing in the mirror, and like we make eye contact and I'm expecting him to like, oh shit, like whatever. Look, when I was in here by myself, that was just a thing I was doing. But we make eye contact, and he just keeps on dancing. I'm like,
oh yeah, no, the younger generation lacks a sense of self-awareness that it makes me sound like a fucking boomer. And but I live near like one of the British international schools, and so I just constantly, there's like a barrage of teenagers who walk towards me in like an 8 across line, and so then I have to go into the street in order to walk to my apartment, and I'm like, who fucking raised you? I understand that your British school is probably teaching you to walk on the other side of the sidewalk than how we do in America. But still, if you see someone walking down the street towards you, you move out of the way.
Yeah, you should just barrel right through.
Yeah, and I fully believe in like, it can be a little cringy to be like a TikToker or vlogging outside, whatever. Like if you like do your little fit checks or like your little dances in the street, we should like leave room in society for people to be cringe, to pursue their passions. This is what we do is cringe. Like to post about like, hey, come to my stand-up comedy show, like come to my blog. That's cringe, sure, but like you need to be a little bit cringe if you believe in what you're doing and you love what you're doing, to have joy in your life. However, when that starts to impede on someone else's like life and experience, like if you're trying to go to the bathroom, that's impeding on you. Or like I see so many of these things where like someone will be like at a Taylor Swift concert, a girl will be at a Taylor Swift concert, and she's like filming herself at the Taylor Swift concert, singing along, blah blah blah, and then in the background is someone who is just like listening, but like not engaging with like the person who is vlogging.
Yeah. And
then everyone in the comments is like, that girl behind you is such a bitch, and it's like, now they're a victim of your internet presence. They did not consent to being a part of this. They're just sitting there minding their own business. I hate that. I do not want to be filmed outside all the time. Yeah.
Well, that's where we're moving towards it. So.
Yeah.
But and now I mean I have to ask this question. I thought of this earlier, but and I feel like you can be honest about it. And if you don't want to answer, that's fine. But what's like the meanest thing you did, like as a kid growing up?
God, the meanest thing I did as a kid growing up, I think.
And let me say, Courtney's a great person. She's very kind. She's very nice. So I don't.
Yeah. I think I there were some things that I said about my friend Lisa that I definitely both regret, but also like we are friends now, we are fine.
Yeah.
And also like she dished some of it back, so I think we're a little bit on an even playing field. There was something this is a story that I've told before, but like it's definitely like not one of my proudest moments. When I was in college, I was on my school's rowing team, and there was a guy on the men's rowing team who I knew, and after I left the rowing team, I started dating a man in one of the fraternities on campus. I was in a sorority, he was in a fraternity, we started seeing each other. And the guy who was on this men's rowing team, he was also a member of this fraternity. Mm-hmm. So the guy on the rowing team, he goes to study abroad, he passes away. It's like really tragic. At one point they have like a memorial service at the school for him, everything like that. It's very sad. We're like, commiserating, we're mourning. The guy I'd been seeing, he's like a year above me, he graduates. He breaks up with me as he's graduating, which is just like horrible for me because I was like, we're gonna be together forever, like we're gonna get married, blah, blah, blah. When they find this man who's passed away, when they find his body, they come back, they have like this memorial service for him, and they like dedicate a bench to him and everything like that. So the rowing team and the fraternity, they all like come back to the school, including my ex-boyfriend comes back to the school to like be part of this ceremony. And then after the ceremony, they're like, okay, we're all gonna go back to the fraternity house across the street to like, sort of celebrate and like commiserate and like whatever, come together.
Yeah.
And so I go across the street to this fraternity house because I'm still very good friends with all the people who are like both on the rowing team and in the fraternity. And I just get really drunk and I corner him in the bathroom and I yell at him and I like rip him to shreds about like him breaking up with me and like how I'm still in love with him and how could he come back to this thing and like not tell me he was coming back to town, and like just I make it all about me. And I'm like, how could you do this to me, instead of acknowledging the fact that like we are here because someone who like, this man was going to be like roommates with my ex-boyfriend when he came back from studying abroad. So like they were very good friends. And instead I'm like they've only got 2 bathrooms in this fraternity house, and you can imagine how dirty they are. So like I've got one of the 2 bathrooms that's in use, and it's the downstairs one. So like it's where most of the people are. And so I'm just like using the bathroom and I'm like yelling at him and everyone can hear it. I'm like making it all about me. And I, to this day, deeply regret that because I'm just like, wow, you really thought that everything in the world was about you, including a funeral.
Yeah. I mean, in that case, I mean, looking at it, I don't think that's, you had a very emotional reaction to a very emotional thing, and obviously you were still grieving your own, your own loss in that sense, and that's kind of how it, like, I see where you're like, okay, yeah, that was gross to make it, meaning when other people are grieving another loss, which is, even bigger. But, to me, I'm kind of like, okay, well, you had an emotional reaction and you were drunk, and, obviously that came out because you had a lot of unresolved feelings, and yeah, so that to me is not as, I get that, like I understand that, so I guess, I don't know, I'm more sympathetic, I guess, to that.
Thank you. I'm very sympathetic. I've never done anything wrong, and actually everything I've ever done has been very reasonable.
Now I take back everything I just said.
Too late. It's on video. I'm going to use it to deepfake you saying other nice things about me.
Yeah. All right. I think we're getting to the end of our time here, but I know we made tangents off of the book subject, but that's okay. Now, like, to summarize, do you have any last words to potential, aspiring or former mean middle school girls around books or just in general?
Sure. For potential middle school mean girls, I would say a little bit of bullying is fine, but know where the limits are, because it does build character, but at a certain point you do become like a bitch and nobody wants to be around you, and then you're sort of creating the cycle that you were hoping to avoid. So that's one. For former mean middle school girls, and then also I just think for adults in general, return back to the content that you consumed as a child, not just for nostalgia's sake, but for reflection on like what it taught you and how it informed your development as a person. And then if you have any young people in your life, it's a good thing to just like check in on what the media that young people have consumed and are consuming presently, to see like what lessons are they being taught from this, and then engage with them about the content that they're consuming. Because I think that if the, you know, adults in my life had, and this is not like me putting blame on anyone, like we make our own choices, whatever, but like if I, looking back now, could like talk to my middle school self and like engage with them in like a conversation about the content that they were consuming, I think that I would have potentially had a different perspective on it. And looking back on these books as I'm rereading them with my co-host Claire, I just think that we're now looking at them through an entirely different lens, this like 2024 lens of like legalized gay marriage and, you know, like immigration and trans issues and the way that the economy is going, and just ourselves as like fully formed, we'll say, as like mostly adults. And we're just like, I have an entirely different perspective and appreciation on the content that I consumed. And so looking back on it, there's just like, I think a lot of people can be very dismissive of like children's literature, and you need to engage with it because that children's literature is setting up the people who they will become.
Yes, and to that point, I think you made a good point there of like actually talking to the children to understand what the lessons are they're taking away from it, because you might watch something and take away this like nice intended message, but they might not even get to that like underlying point or even the overarching point and think like, oh yeah, obviously this is about acceptance of yourself, where they could be taken away like, oh, don't be weird. Like that might be the message that people take away. So yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Where can people follow you and whatnot?
Sure.
If you want to be followed.
Yeah, I consent to you following me on the internet. My Instagram is at Courtney Zelazny, Zelazny, not like the author, but unless that gets me nepotism points. TikTok the same, at Courtney Zelazny, and then I'm also on YouTube. I'm on Twitter, or the app formerly known as Twitter, and I produce a show at the Lincoln Lodge on Sundays called Sunday Best, and I'm going to be in a play at the Annoyance starting this week, actually, starting May 30th.
Oh, wow. What play?
It's called Never Not Murder. It's like an original comedic 1940s detective noir thing, like film noir Wes Anderson.
Nice. Awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Courtney, thank you.
Oh, I forgot. I should plug my podcast.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. If you are interested in more books for me middle school girls, then you can follow my podcast at The Witty Committee. It's a pun on the book, on the click from the first Click book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right.